Tithing, tithing, tithing. Did you know that you actually did not have to tithe to be able to, be with the Heavenly Father? But did you know that tithing is actually something that's very good to do? So when the first churches were formed, tithing was introduced not as tithing, but giving. You give back to the needy, you give back to others who are in need and who has less than. So in the book of Acts, when the first church was formed, one of the first things that they actually introduced was giving to the ones who had less, giving back to the less fortunate. And so what they started to do was that people began to give to the first church because they wanted to be a part of giving. Do you know what happened after the people began to give and they began to be selfless and they began to give what they had? So there wasn't anybody who was in need actually after they began to give. Once people who had houses, they sold their houses, they would sell a house and then give the profits from the house to the church. Or those are people who were, very wealthy. Then you would have people who would just give like what they had, which was coats and jackets and clothing. Then you had people who would give, of course, animals. Back then they would give goats and sheeps and herds, and they would give those to the church, and they would give those to people who had less or didn't have anything. They needed a whole life to get started. And so people would join the church, and the church would help get a person's life together. We've seen people do that before for others. There are people who today who get cars just to give cars away. And they give people cars because they need cars. There are people who do these wonderful things for other people. And it's something that we can actually learn to give to the church. But look, if you are very wary about giving to a church, look for a church that is doing something for the community. Look and see what churches are actually out there into the community and is actually giving back, is actively giving back. And if you're getting with a church that is just starting up, you have to feed into your church for it to take root and take form, and for it to build into a building. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Thank you so much for listening.